to you by our stable of sponsors.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Weigh In. Lots to get through as always, and of course we do look forward to bringing you a review of the Group 1 Weight for Age Classic from Otaki. That really was our feature over the weekend, but a very strong undercard at Matamata as well. Michael Gearin, a very warm welcome to you. I feel like I say it every week, we've got lots to get through, but we're going to be tackling some really big industry issues later in the show. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, we are today. Hi everybody, thank you for joining us and great to be here. It's Derby week. It sort of snuck up on us really quickly because there's so many other things going on. A great weekend for us as an industry in Australia. The big girls, Tafane and Very Elegant stepping up. But also, we've had a few setbacks recently. We wanted to update people on some of those. So Bernard Saundry in the second and third segments today is going to join us to talk about tracks, whip penalties. We'll hear from Jason Fulford from Auckland Thoroughbred Racing about what you try to achieve with the track, because I don't know that much about them. So we went out to try and find out a bit more for you. We'll try and answer some of those questions so we can get them done, put them to the side, and this time next week we can all go horse shopping. But this time next week seems a long way away because we have a super derby coming up at Ellerslie on Saturday first.
Yeah, we do. Super competitive event, isn't it? Let's start our review segment of the show with that Group 1. Of course, Mascarpone caused a minor upset when producing a first Group 1 win for Wirromupin.
Germanicus wide around, shadows cast, looking to get into the clear. They gallop on down, Mascarpone float into the centre of the track. Brando underneath of it, starting to come home strongly now. And then we've got Amarilinia starting to put him in the middle and running on the inside, Hasselbro. Here, Mascarpone at the 1600 and the big bold chestnut's too good. Mascarpone's got it. Second, Amarilinia Brando behind.
Wasn't just a Group 1 win, it was a very dominant Group 1 win. The ears pricked on the line, Michael, almost effortless, and very tactical from Wirromupin. I know it was something he discussed with the Rogerson team pre-race to come around the bend and then make his way to the outside of the track, and by the look of that, he hit a fast lane.
And first, of course, the first Group 1 for Mascarpone, for Billy Pinn, as you mentioned, and also for the sire, shooting to win. So a lot of firsts, and of course Grant Rogerson and Team Rogerson, well, that's his Group win 50 plus, so he's used to this. Wonderful horse. The country needs horses like him, big, extravagant horses, great to look at him, people love them. He's a horse who likes to race on the speed, and therefore he'll keep the Levantes and the Entreviers honest. I wasn't quite sure he would get a mile, but I think free rolling in front suited him. I don't think it was the strongest Group 1 mile we'll ever see. I think there were some nice performances in behind, but I thought he was great. And Roger said afterwards, as Rogers want to do, he said, look, I reckon he'll get 2,000 metres.
The way he hit the line, you'd almost have to agree with him. From what Wirromupin said after the race as well, he said that he pretty much hit the line and was really strong after the line too, so we'll have to give it a go to find out.
Well, if you put him in front, say in a Canterbury Gold Cup, not many horses are going to attack a horse with that naturally high cruising speed. So I don't know if he'll get 2,000 metres, but it's going to be fun to watch. And I think he's a better horse than he was this time last year. He's a pretty good horse this time last year. We have Levante heading to Australia and Entrevier probably heading to Australia and eventually being retired. He's a horse who probably has competitive goals from 1,200 to 2,000 now, which is a real rarity unless you're an Avantage type horse. Just on the runner-up, Amarilinia heading to the Bone Crusher at Ellerslie, and I thought she would be better there, probably at 2,000 metres, the 1,600 a touch short, and Brando heading to Tauranga for a race there in about 3 weeks' time. So not the strongest Group 1 ever, but you've still got to work hard to win them. Well done to Team Rogerson and also to Billy Pinn, who's had a really tricky last year. Sometimes he gets himself in trouble. I think he was happy that he got some time reduced off his whip incident, and I think he's back now and pretty determined, and he's got a pretty busy week ahead of him too. So I think a lot of people are happy to see him taking that next step in his career, Emily.
Yeah, exactly right. And just from a breeding perspective, Mascarpone was bred by Westbury Stud, a $160,000 purchase, and the half-sister to Mascarpone by Reliable Man, lot 261 at that upcoming Karaka sale. Well, let's have a little look at Alhambra Lad, who was also racing there at Otaki on Saturday. This is race number 5. A nice performance by the 4-year-old.
Between these runners as they gallop on down to the 200 metres here, and we've got Rucler, a Lumberlad now, and Texas T's coming after them over on the outside. A Lumberlad on the inside, Texas T over on the outside, and Rucler, Texas T, a Lumberlad's lifting, and Rucler, he's coming back, a Lumberlad. He's a very good pony, this, and a Lumberlad will beat Texas T, Rucler, Bolbetti behind them, Vespasian, Capaldi.
A very good pony here, summed up well there by Tony Lee, and I know post-race I think Alan Sherrick indicated that maybe a look across the ditch was on the horizon, but a lovely consistent type and a well-deserved win.
Well, here's a funny story for you. When a horse wins a race at Otaki, you don't naturally think the major aim for the rest of the year could be Randwick on Melbourne Cup Day. But there's a new $2 million race at Randwick on Melbourne Cup Day. The team behind Alhambra Lad are in negotiations with an Australian trainer who, it may be in a deal situation, often these are 50-50s. The horse could head to Sydney and be aimed at that race.
Wow.
So that's
some good forward planning.
Well,
Yep.
exactly, and very smart from the young trainer involved. I won't name the trainer, but he's a good, young, smart trainer in New South Wales, has approached him and said, look, I think this can work for both of us. It's a $2 million race, which, like a lot of those pop-up races in Sydney, may not be the strongest. It's an unusual story for a horse coming out of a race at Otaki, but he's obviously a pretty good horse. Just on Alan's team, our Hail Mary out of the Auckland Cup, so she's going to be aimed at some of the Mears races, those weight for age Mears races coming up around the 2,000 sort of metre area at Te Rapa. Also, Cinerama, who we saw earlier in the Group 1, was only okay. Alan said both our Hail Mary and Cinerama will go to stud next year, so this is their last campaign. And Seamus is in the Live-In Classic. There are offers on the table for him. Money hasn't turned up yet, so just be a little bit careful with Seamus in the futures market at this stage, because he is being aimed there. But a horse like him, as you would imagine, Emily, has some pretty serious offers.
You know what I'm going to say, take the
I know.
future-proof
I know what you're
option,
gonna
that'll
say.
guarantee that you're okay when it comes to Seamus and the Live-In Classic. Matamata, of course, also played host to a number of stakes races, and we want to have a little look at Maven Bell next, who was the winner of the Matamata Breeders' Stakes in very impressive fashion.
Choose You, Maven Bell and Hannah Lay down the extreme outside. They get to the 200 metres, and Maven Bell made the lead here from Hannah Lay on the outside. Battling away Bestseller on the inside, Pacific Dragon. It's Maven Bell at the 100 metres. She led a length and a half. She's shooting for 3 from 3, and she's got it. And she's taken out the Matamata Breeder Stakes effortlessly. Bestseller, a great run, second.
She really keeps impressing me, this filly. She just keeps on stepping up with every assignment she's been asked. That's 3 from 3 now, Michael, and I don't know if we've got any vision of her coming back to scale, but she looked absolutely chuffed with herself. I think the confidence is growing. She's realising that she's got a bit of ability, and she just keeps stepping on up.
I tell you who else was chuffed was Jamie Richards. I spoke to him last night about this, and he went into the race not sure which one of those 3, and that's a great shot because all 3 of them are there, was his better chance, but he said she was good at Te Rapa, way better. He said new level for her. Raises the question, do you go to Ellerslie in 2 weeks' time for the Diamond? He said he and the team at Tiaka will look at her this morning, Monday morning, and make a decision heading forward. But they are going to give her a Group 1 chance. So if it's not the Diamond taking on Dynastic, that's on the 13th, so on the Sunday in 2 weeks' time, she may go to the Size Produce. He reckons she'll get 1400. So I think she's been a real late season shock for them. Hannah Lee, who was really good, and I Choose You, also potentially in the mix for the Diamond at Ellerslie. So they're not scared of Dynastic, they're not steering away from him, even though he's their #1 gun. And I think we're going to have a really deep 2 Group 1s. I think the Diamond into the Size Produce. I think we're going to have a lot of fun because there's some pretty good horses there, including the horse who ran second, the Rote filly, best seller for John Barry, and Challenge Syndications. I thought that was really good too. And just a quick shout out to Challenge Syndications. Adrian and his team there don't pay a lot for these horses. They do a really good job. They'll be shopping at Karaka next week. I think everybody's got a market, and he's really good at finding a market for horses which aren't going to cost a lot of money.
Was
and
Jennifer Eccles, was it 5,000?
Yeah, and he's had quite a few of them. He does a really good job with them, Adrian. So this is one where I thought, she deserves her mention because it was a hell of a run.
It was. And I just wonder with Maven Bell, she's got that, with her being a later, she's on the way up, whereas I guess some of the others are maybe crying out for a break or you know, a little let up in their preparations, whereas she seems to be a horse that's on an upward trajectory.
Well, and also the dam, of course, her dam is a sister to the dam of Levante. So all of a sudden you start saying, is she a contender, the dam of Levante, as this horse's grand dam for Broodmare of the Year? She starts to get very close to being in that marketplace for a very special title. So look, sometimes it's nice to see these random horses turn up. I think when people think of Te Aka, they think, oh, well, they've got I'm Invincibles, we'll see one of those in a second, and they've got all these fast nets and that sort of thing, and obviously a bunch of Savabils. And it's really easy to say, well, when you've got that much scale and money, you're going to win a lot of races. But this horse is by Burgundy, and it's a homebred, and that anybody watching the show can probably achieve that, to be honest, at that level if you're breeding horses. So I think it's really easy to sometimes just say it's just one thing, where they have a lot of scope with what they do. I think Entre Vie was like a $10,000 or $20,000 purchase. So I do think it's important to remember that it's not just about money and scale, it's also about having an eye for a horse.
Yeah, it most definitely is. Moving on to the Matamata slipper here on weigh-in, and this was won by Alabama Gold in a dazzling front-running effort.
Who and dropping out of it sharply there was Cracker Can, homeward bound, 250 to go. Alabama Gold, the one to catch, led by 5 lengths here at the 200. In second spot there we've got Desert Lightning. Endeluse is battling on. Over on the inside, Zahir. Alabama Gold at the 100 metres. He's 5 lengths in front. He's going to run them into the deck here. The son of Termiluse wins the Fairview Matamata slipper. Alabama Gold bolted in. Endeluse second, third, Zahir a nice run, and then followed up.
It was a very impressive win by Alabama Gold. I'm pretty sure a second stakes victory for stallion Turn Me Loose, and came through that Karaka Million, finished in 8th but was a little bit unlucky and made a nice step towards this effort in the Matamata slipper at the home track and just couldn't be caught, too slick.
And just bolted it, really. Often when horses come out of the Karaka Million, you sort of think on the other side, what shape are they going to be in? And I spoke to Stephen Ortridge. He said that we were really lucky. Once we got run off in the bend, the jockey looked after the horse, had a week in the paddock, and clearly, as we see here, has bounced back really well. Another big win for Sam Weatherly, who's in great form for the summer. Stan Payton owns this horse, and he's been racing horses with Stephen Aldridge for like 40 years. And Stan's been a little bit crook, he's been a bit under the weather, so a shout out to him, and we're thinking of you, as you mentioned, by Turn Me Loose, who's going to have some lovely horses at Karaka, probably value buying too, because he's had those 2 decent horses. Really nice winner last week in Australia. I think it's slowly turning for him, just in time for the sales. But yeah, when you see a horse like this, you think, well, he's going to the Diamond. He could potentially sneak a Group 1 somewhere. So I think Turn Me Loose is just evolving at a time when Windsor Park has a few things going right for them heading into the sales. I've got some of these stallions like Sham Express are kicking goals for them at the right time, and if it sounds like we're talking about the sales a lot, it's because for these people, as you know, Emily, it's the culmination of everything for a whole season. So these results close up and hard up against the sales, they just feel that much more important.
It's 2 weeks, isn't it? And that's sort of their main shop front, so to speak. Up next is the Lisa Chittick Plate, where Imperatriz was the winner of this one. Another really impressive victory by the daughter of I'm Invincible.
Queen, followed by Luke Crayer and On Demand at the 250. Favoured Imperatriz put 3 lengths on them here, and he had a very confident peep over the shoulder, did Michael McNabb. Shut the gate time, Imperatriz. Have a look at a class act go. Racing into second, Luke Crayer from Dragon Queen, but that was so easy. Imperatriz has bolted in. Second over, so went across the line.
It was nothing more than an exercise gallop. I'm pretty sure she would have done more than that on a Tuesday morning in a gallop with a mate, but really impressive performance there by Imperatriz. She's always promised a heck of a lot, and interesting where they go with her next. Obviously, she beat the older horses there, but a look at the Levin Classic potentially.
Yeah, I spoke to Jamie. So Levin Classic was the reason she was in this race, because they wanted a 3-week turnaround. She's a horse who doesn't like the 2-week turnaround. So they had the option to go to Allergy this Saturday, but the 3-week suited better, even though this race initially didn't look ideal. She wasn't well weighted, but once Show of Roses came out of the race, she was able to control the speed, and it was only a 600-metre dash for her. Michael McNabb on top of her and looking a bit bemused by the entire thing. I think he got lonely there, Nabber. He was looking for people to hang out with, but there was no one to be seen. Here's the Living Classic market. She's now $3, so on that you would say she has to be favourite, but it's a very deep race, Emily.
God, it's a fantastic race, isn't it?
Isn't it? So
yeah.
and the top 6 are intending on heading there, so sometimes we say don't be on this or that. Those horses are supposed to be going there with that warning around Seamus. Just on Michael McNabb, now leads the premiership. So the seesaw between him and Craig Grills, Nab is on top of that at the moment by 1, and Craig's not back for another week. So the way he's riding, he's obviously getting first pick of a lot of good horses. He's on a lot of good horses at Hastings on Wednesday. He might be able to get a buffer here, which will be really hard to pull back, and now he's $2.10 to win the Jockeys Premiership. Also, Jamie trained 4 on the day, so I spoke to Stephen Marsh because Stephen will train a winner or 2, and then Jamie will train 4 or 5, and that gap's now become 34. So Jamie's got a month more to go. He leaves us a month tomorrow, and at this rate, he might be 40 in front. And Marshy said, look, we're not going to catch 40. But we want to stay to 30, because once Jamie's gone, then Stephen would potentially have April, May, June, July, 4 months to try and get it.
He needs some winter gallopers.
Yeah. Well, he said he's got a really nice team coming up, and he's really happy with what he's got, but he's fully aware of the fact that training 40 winners is an awful lot. So I think he would like to stay 30 by April 1, but the way Jamie's training at the moment, that may be incredibly difficult to do. With Tiaka's success, they're on the verge of 5 million for the season domestically, which is only $1 million less than the whole of last season. And we've still got 5 months of the season to go. So it's a remarkable amount they've been able to accrue, because this year they've had a lot more races like the 1,000 Guineas where they've actually run 1, 2 or 1, 2, 3, 4. So they've accrued a lot more money. They're actually on track for their best ever season.
Goodness me, yeah, very good stuff. Let's get you onto the Kaimai Stakes. Langkawi caused an upset in this next one. It was off the ballot and into the winner's enclosure with this performance.
Langkawi, time to celebrate. Homeward bound, 200 metres to go. Even chance the leader from Slave to Love. Langkawi's coming after them. Out wide, Campionessa running on also. Pep Talk down the outside. It's even chance in front. Tackled by Langkawi. Slave to Love wider out, Campionessa. It's Langkawi going to even chance and Slave to Love. Langkawi got there. Second over even chance. Third Slave to Love. Fourth over Photos.
Yeah, Langkawi causing a real upset there in the Kaimai Stakes. A horse who's been, Michael, just had a real purple patch of form. I think it's 3 wins in its past 4 outings and a first stakes win for Tegan Newman. So a nice result for the team. It
was, and Tegan's fought back. She's had some on and off times over the last year or so with injuries, and she's doing a great job. Works really hard. Thrilled to see her get a Group 1. Black type. This was a black type ride too. Cut the corners and rode it beautifully. On Langkawi, I spoke to the team behind him, and they were saying, look, he just lost form as a good 3-year-old, because he was a pretty good 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And ran a whole bunch of seconds as a 2-year-old. And then he came back and raced in some really strong races like the Karaka Classic. He went a whole period where he didn't win a race for 20 starts. Then he won a race last year. Then Peter Mackay said he's just maturing at the right time. He's just mentally maturing, because he's quite a hard horse to work with, because he pulled so hard. And that's why he said now, we have a real racehorse, and he's the winner of 6 races now and $212,000. So he said that maturity's not totally unexpected. It's the Sir Slick family, so a family that often gets better with age and can hold their form for a long time. So he's probably, again, like a mascarpone horse, he could turn up in a Canterbury Gold Cup or one of those races, over the 2,000 metres and be very competitive. But yeah, really good feel-good story for Tegan too, because as I said, she's worked really hard in difficult circumstances. Horse got on off the ballot. First time she's ever ridden a horse for Peter Mackay.
There you go, 1 start, 1 win. Now keep that 100% record intact. We move you to Pukekohe now, where we had the Oaks Prelude midweek stakes racing, and this one was a victory for Go Racing and Stephen Marsh. Miss Ella on a path towards the New Zealand Oaks.
With a very good kick, put 2 lengths on them from an Invincible. Then came Gingerbread wider out, is outfit, and then followed by down the outside running on is That's All She Wrote, but with 100 metres to go, shut the gate, Miss Ella. She has blown them off the track. Second over will be outfit. Third, Miss Madison a run, and then followed by Invincible. That's All She Wrote. Then came Great Plains. Further back in the field was another Bella, followed over then by
On speed and on the rail, Miss Ella gets the well-deserved stakes victory, and she's had to overcome a number of little upsets, hasn't she, of course, with the races being abandoned, but didn't matter, got the victory where they wanted it, and looks like a nice progressive type.
Third time lucky. It's the third time they tried to run this race and had to go to Pukekohe to be run, but she heads to the Oaks via the Sunline. So the Sunline vars at the Carnival, coming up at Ellerslie, then on to the Oaks. Thought the second horse was pretty good, but I'm not sure there's a great deal of depth as an Oaks winning race behind the first two, because we still have Self Obsession, who heads to the Lowland on Wednesday at Hastings, and of course the Perfect Pink has changed tack. And then you add horses like Achieve, and all of a sudden, very quickly, we're talking about quite a deep Oaks at that top level. So yes, the 1 is going, yes, the 10 is going. It will head to, as I said, Wednesday at Hastings. Glory Bound is going, and so is Bellon Rouge. La Creek is not going to go to the Oaks, but even if you take La Creek out of that picture, that's a pretty strong top 10 there, or top 12. So while that was a really good win from her, stepping up in distance to 2100, we'll see how she handles that. But even if she does handle it, gee, there's some good horses in this Oaks.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? I love Self Obsession, so I'm in her corner. I think she's just marvellous. Can't wait to see her stepping up to that 2,400 metres. We now get you across the ditch because, of course, we had 5 Group 1s across Australia on Saturday, and a couple of those produced some really good New Zealand results. The first of them is Sierra Sue.
Presents Sierra Sue needs a run. I'm Thunderstruck's hit a wall, and they were followed by Mo'unga. It's Tarath at the 200. Sierra Sue lifting. Tafane needs to find Mo'unga late. Sierra Sue takes Tarath. 100 metres to go. Sierra Sue pulls clear, and Sierra Sue won the futurity. Mo'unga second, Tafane third, Tarath 4. Then I'm Thunderstruck, Streets of Avalon, Extreme Flight.
Really nice victory by Sierra Sue, a good ride by Johnny Allen to position her in a striking position, and all importantly a Kiwi trifecta at Group 1 level in the futurity, of course, with Mo'unga being by Savabeel, Tafane being by Ocean Park. Incredible story behind Sierra Sue, $2,000 purchase from that New Zealand Bloodstock May sale, trial winner for Peter Locke, purchased by Phil Cataldo for Australian Connections, and here we go, Group 1 winner, second Group 1 victory for the mare.
Yeah, and Trent and Natalie do such a good job with their horses. Like they're buying big at the sales all the time, and yet this horse only cost that $2,000, as you mentioned. And it's just so important leading into the sales that you have this level of victories, because we know Probabeel, she's flowing the flag, and Very Elegant wasn't a sales horse, but she's flowing the flag. And then we get to Mo'unga. But when you on Thunderstruck's in this race, and he's luckless, the trifectas in this race, it's so hard for owners and trainers to ignore, because no one's coming to Karaka to buy the Golden Slipper winner. We know that. But there's a hell of a lot of races worth a lot of money between 1,400 and 2,000 metres in Australia, and that's the market, even if we're not admitting it, that's exactly what we're targeting. And that's the buyers we're targeting. And when those people see that, they go, okay, I've got to go to Karaka to find one of those horses, because we are consistently producing horses in that distance range better, or at least as good as the Australians, outside the Winx type horses, and we're about to see another one of them.
Yeah, we sure are. Another interesting thing I was reading actually on NZ Racing News was Aussie Kia made contact with Peter Locke. Aussie Kia, obviously the principal owner in Sierra Sue, made contact with Peter Locke and gifted Peter's son Jamie and daughter Casey a 1% share in Sierra Sue. So a really nice gift, and no doubt some celebrations there with Sierra Sue getting that second Group 1. Talking of other Kiwi successes, as Michael mentioned, of course, the Chipping Norton Stakes was the second victory in the race for Very Elegant, and she was at her normal tough best.
Room. Angel of Truth in front from Think It Over, and Very Elegant. She's starting to extend now, and the great mare hits the lead of the 200. Very Elegant, a length on. Think It Over is in for the fight, and then came She's Ideal. Colette can't get out. Very Elegant just in front, about a neck in front to She's Ideal, is looking to rein on the party, but Very Elegant, she's brave, she lifts, and she wins her second Chipping Norton.
I suppose the first NB note or to the side of the Randwick meeting was that the track conditions were incredibly testing, which of course suits Very Elegant. She loves those conditions, but she still had to be tough, and you can almost see it on her face when the challengers come. She says, no, not today, I know how to win. And an 11th Group 1, if you can't call her a champion, I don't know what you can call her.
And especially when you add a Caulfield Cup and a Melbourne Cup, it's not like she's won 11 Group 1s and 8 of them have been against the mares. You know, she's won at all distances against all comers, and she hasn't shirked from a fight, that fight may take her all the way to Paris in October. Before then, though, the Ranvit, then the QE2, which you would suggest a right at her mercy, particularly if the rain continues in Sydney. It can't continue the way it is, but yeah, there's going to be some class horses join the fray. Zaki's supposed to be heading to the All-Star Mile, so whether he comes back for a QE2, God only knows. Anamo's supposed to be heading there, but if it's a dog fight, very elegant, might out tough, an Animo type horse, a lot might come down to track conditions in because, as I've mentioned, they've had so much rain over there. But I think most people who watch this show and love horse racing would love to see her go to Paris. They would love to see her in the Arc with Chris Waller, who's one of our men, and James McDonald, who's one of our men, and one of the horses bred here in the country. I think it'd be a fairy tale story, and if she ran top 5, I think we'd all be stoked. So let's hope she gets there. That'd be so much fun to be part of.
And I think you're going to get her best, aren't you? Wherever she goes, she's going to put in her best. So, yeah, fingers crossed we can pull that off. The Prix d'Arc de Triomphe will be pretty special with Very Elegant. Well, up next, we're going to get you off to a break here on Wayne, and things get serious on the back of that. We're talking tracks with Bernard Saundry.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Well, it's the biggest issue in racing tracks. We're here at Ellerslie on a track which doesn't seem to be having any problems on Avondale Guineas morning. Ironically, final week, it has rained overnight. Track seems good to someone like me who likes looking at tracks but doesn't really know how they work. This man does. Jason Fulford is the track manager here for Auckland Thoroughbred Racing. And Jace, final week. It's rained this morning, you irrigated last night. The life of a track manager.
Yeah, it can suck, you know, you always work in hindsight afterwards. Gee, I wish I didn't put so much water on. I only just put a little bit on, bearing in mind that we had the 3-year-olds going on around today, setting up for the Derby. So we keep that sting out of the track. Of course, that's what has also become more of a demand as well. Not just for safety, but to keep that sting out of the track.
Everybody's talking about tracks, so let's talk about your track first, because I presume you have more money and scale and staff available to you. This track looks good to me. Now, it's a little bit wet on top because there's been rain this morning. When it's dry and we get into rain on the morning of the race, is that what tends to cause slipperiness?
To be honest with you and straight up, look, what causes slipperiness is irrigation, full stop. It's the most dangerous tool. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is
so irrigation's different from rain?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Why?
Rain is just pure water. It has no minerals in it, right? So when it hits the ground, it is absorbing up everything. So it has that nature where it'll travel through the soil a lot better. It has a positive energy about it, carrying nutrients, nitrogen from the energy from the sky, you know. When it hits the ground, it absorbs a lot better. Whereas irrigation water, it's already got minerals sitting in it. It's like a dead matter going onto the track, and it just sits there. It does not bind into the soil like rain does, so it sits on top.
Okay, so dry all week in Auckland. It's been really hot. The track got very dry. You watered last night. Well, looking at this, it doesn't seem slippery. It's a little bit slippery, like a rugby field might be with some wet on it. But how do you make it so that under those tricky circumstances which have unveiled in the last 24 hours, this won't be slippery today? How do you do that?
Well, even if we didn't water last night, I'd be pretty confident that it wasn't going to be slippery.
So why? How?
Well, a couple of weeks ago we had a forecast of rain coming. Our annual renovations, which is the utmost importance that you've got to do for every track, not just Ellerslie, we couldn't get a lot of our maintenance work done this year because of COVID. We couldn't get the dethatching done and the undersowing done. So instead of doing that, we used other machinery, which is, as an example, we just used a little bit of hollow coring. We're only going in 2 inches, you could hardly see it. It opens it up so that the rain whether it's rain or irrigation, especially irrigation, it penetrates straight into that soil and doesn't sit on top, and therefore it's getting dragged down and below.
I hear these terms, other people hear these terms, we don't know what they mean. When you're aerating tracks, where you're getting into them and breaking them up, is that about keeping them softer on top so the horses don't have the concussion, or so that the rain and the water can get into them and therefore we have a consistent surface that doesn't become slippery?
A bit of both really, killing two birds with one stone. The decompaction is so that you get your better turf growth, And if you've got air in there, it doesn't matter how hard it is on top, the horses will still have a good stride on top with these air underneath that top surface. The moisture just helps break through that a little bit better. But of course, you've got to have the aeration, otherwise the turf doesn't grow. It just makes a whole lot more performance. And of course, with the aeration, you get consistency all around the track as well.
If we can just move down to the track here. So we're looking at the track, it's not overly long, it looks pretty good to us. So what are you trying to achieve lengthwise and with grass cover so that it's not too long or not too short?
Usually we would mow last for a Saturday race meeting. Our last mow would be on a Wednesday. It cut at 100 mils and then we'd let it grow. Whatever happens after that. Lately though, we've been letting it grow a little bit longer, so we're cutting sooner. And
Why is that?
Well, it gives that a little bit more cushion underneath the foot. Sometimes, you know, if it's going to rain or whatever, evapotranspiration can happen a lot more if the grass is too long. That final cut, water will penetrate the ground a lot better if it's cut shorter. So we're putting the water on a lot more sooner and then carrying it through just to nurse it as we go.
What can we, as an industry, if you had the checkbook and you had the rules and you could do what you wanted to our tracks, what can we do differently, Jason, to make the abandonments happen less often?
Which is the exact question is what NZT are coming up with. They want to get on top of it and we're supporting it too. I think irrigation is probably the utmost, even though, you know, it's a contradiction to what I'm talking about. It's the most dangerous tool. It shouldn't be used for preparing tracks. It should be used for growing grass. That's all there is to it. The more we use, if we get everyone on the same wavelength that irrigation is going to cause abandonments, and that's probably 90% of the problem. That's all there is to it. That's just how it's going to happen. But it is machinery to go on top of that and access to it immediately when they want it and when we need it. Because weather dictates when you're going to use machinery and when and how you're going to use it. But of course, irrigation has to go on consistently all the way around your track, that way and strongly. So it's going to be the same. If you're putting it on, it needs to go on as quick as possible, all in the same time.
And a big thank you to Jason Fulford for his time. Really important interview there and really good to get his insight into what's going on. Welcome in Bernard Saundry to weigh in this morning. Bernard, great to have you with us.
Good morning, Emily.
I won't mess around with the niceties. We'll get straight into the issues as we're limited for time. And obviously we heard there about the tracks and the unfolding of what's happened over the past, I guess, month, you could say. Where are we at with tracks from regards to your perspective?
Well, yeah, it's unfortunate that we've had the incidents we've had, 2 meetings at New Plymouth, 1 at Tauranga, and clearly a lack of confidence from a number of jockeys in relation to the performance of some of our tracks. So we've all got to do better. NZTR has a reserve for the first time in, I think, 10 years for infrastructure and to roll out better equipment for clubs, support clubs in their major renovations, in track reconstructions. That's got to be a priority for us. I know the priority is prize money, but as important are our tracks for the safety of our participants, for our punters. So we need an investment and we need to do things better going forward. Now on Friday, we met with the club at New Plymouth and our track advisor and a couple from the tag group. That's the track advisory group. And we've got a pathway to fix that track. We're not going to go back there until such time as the jockeys are confident they will go back. So there'll be a major renovation go on as of this week. And the track will be out of action for 10 to 12 weeks. We'll miss the 25th of March race meeting. And off the back of that, we will have a return to racing policy program where we'll put jump outs and trials and make sure that jockeys are comfortable to go back and getting the confidence back of all of us. Now, I understand Taranaki and New Plymouth have sometimes got different views, but we want to work with them to get this fixed for the longer term.
Bernard, what concerns me is not the fact that occasionally we have these things go wrong, but when we had track reports done about Trentham and about Taranaki, they said that there was nothing wrong, but it was still slippery. So the actual reports we got said fundamentally all the right things were followed, but the track was still deemed to be too dangerous to ride on. How do people listening at home marry those two things up?
Yeah, I can understand, Mick, it can be confusing, but when you look at the reports we've had done, Trentham, there was inconsistency in the moisture levels around the track. That goes to irrigation or natural rainfall. There's nothing better than natural rainfall, as we heard from Jason before. But the irrigation programs are really important. as is the investment in irrigation programs. We've got tracks across the country that haven't got irrigation systems or systems that are years old that need maintenance and upgrading. So, yeah, it is a combination of things, and we don't want to see horses slipping on tracks.
Are you confident that we have the right chain of command around tracks from you and Cameron sitting at the top to what's soon going to be Bruce, heading down to people who are track managers? Do we have the support? Do we have the right administration to get this done? Or is it a whole bunch of small groups doing their own thing?
Yeah, well, the last thing we want is all small groups doing different things. We need to be coordinated. It needs to be managed appropriately. One of the actions out of the Trentham report, there's 8 individual actions, and one of them is making sure we get the right structure in place. I say it's a team effort. It's not only us, it's the clubs, it's the stewards, it's the participants. And yes, we need to do better, and we have to do better, and we need to change up whatever we're doing, because what we're doing at the moment is not hitting the mark in terms of, but that's a collective us, you know, NZTR, the clubs, and working with the RIB. There's no doubt over the last 10 or 15 years the views of jockeys, the health and safety measures that are now more prevalent in every business across New Zealand, across Australia, across the world, are more important than what they were then back 15, 20 years ago. So it's a collective effort.
You touch on the jockeys and they've lost confidence in some of the tracks. Isn't that the ultimate kick in the arse for the industry? Because if the jockeys are losing confidence, and in a parade ring situation like at New Plymouth, they don't want to go out there, that's incredibly dangerous for the financial stability of this industry.
100%, and that's why we have to bring the jockeys with us on the programs that need to be introduced to get these tracks that they haven't got confidence in, for them to have confidence.
I want to go to Karaka next week and buy a horse, and so do 1,000 people watching this show. What confidence can they have that in a year's time, and let's be honest, Alice's closing shortly, so that's our best track gone, that in a year's time these problems can and will be solved, whether they are personnel problems, whether they are money problems. What faith can I take out of this conversation that it's still going to be a race meeting when there's supposed to be race meetings, Booted?
So the faith you can have is that we have a program in place. Look at what we've got in front of us today. It's fantastic that Ellerslie will be reconstructed. We're currently undertaking a Tiaraho reconstruction, $1.8 million project. We've got the third of our synthetic tracks coming online in the middle of this year. So it'll be 3 synthetic tracks, Awapuni, Cambridge and Riccarton. We have got a program to talk about fixing Awapuni. We know Awapuni struggles at some times of the year. So we want to be, when we get through the Ellerslie, when we get through the Tiara, we get the 3 synthetic tracks up and running, we get the right equipment out into the regions. As an investment, we're starting to do some of that now, and there'll be more of that go in the budget cycle to the NZTR board in the next 3 or 4 months. Then we need to be reconstructing a track every year for the next 5 years. That's and building that confidence, having the right equipment, getting the right policies in place, and people working together.
We mentioned confidence and jockey confidence. Do you have confidence we have enough skilled track managers to do these jobs?
We could always do with more skilled track managers. I'm never going to walk away from the fact the more resource we can, qualified resource, experienced resource to put into the maintenance and the care of our racetracks, it's got to be a better outcome for everybody. The experienced track managers we've got there today that run, they all know their business. They treat their tracks as if they're their own family. They're there 7 days a week. But sometimes when you talk to them and the tractor's 20 years old and the verti drainer, I haven't got one of those. When was the last time you upgraded
irrigation? So can you get them one of those?
Yes, we can.
Have you got enough money to do that for enough tracks?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can help them with irrigation. We can help them. Now, the other important thing, as Jason touched on in the thing before, is that we need to get proper renovation periods. Critically important. And that goes to the conflict between allocating the racing program and the proper renovation programs.
Isn't that where the synthetic tracks come in, so we can use those as a winter buffer to give us time to fix these tracks?
Well, that is part of the solution. The other part is the ideal time to do major renovations is when you can grow grass. So the challenge we've got, it's the rub between the racing program and the track, having appropriate track renovations. I know Tarapa's just come off the back of a major track renovation. We'll do one at New Plymouth for the next 10 to 12 weeks. Every track needs to have, but then we can use those synthetic tracks to take the load, but it needs to be properly planned with the race dates allocation and when we need renovation periods done.
Why do some tracks not seem to have a problem and some tracks do? Because they all seem to be made of grass and they all seem to get rain. So why are some tracks an issue and some aren't?
A multitude of issues, lack of investment, lack of management, lack of oversight, support. We've got infrastructure across the country away from tracks that are 40 years old and never been touched. We're just getting up to speed with our plastic running rails. We'll put a plastic running rail at Avondale in the next couple of weeks. There is track infrastructure that is really important for the future of this business to make sure we've got confidence from jockeys, trainers and punters to invest and participate in New Zealand racing.
There's people watching this show, and that's who we're here to work for, and they, as I said, they want to go to Crack and they want to buy a horse, or they want to breed a horse. If I was having a beer with you after this and all the cameras are off and I said to you, no bullshit, Bernard, is this going to be fixed, or am I better off staying out this year? What would you honestly tell me?
It'll be fixed, and I can only reiterate the infrastructure fund that we've got in place to invest and assist the clubs. We've got clubs coming together, Auckland and counties. We'll have got investment and funds to fix. We've also got the 3 synthetic tracks. We've got Tiara being reconstructed. You know, the next one, in my view, needs to be Awapuni, and then Te Rapa, and then Riccarton. So those plans are on the table today. They need to be funded. And hand on heart,
when does it start?
Without good tracks and good prize money, you haven't got industry.
Do we have to wait till next season to start when you talk the infrastructure fund?
Mate,
is that coming on board now?
Yeah, we are investing in verti drainers for the clubs. The clubs and us investing in the purchase of those things. But there will be in an investment cycle. There's got a budget plan going to the board in April, May, which will talk about the things that need to be done. But that doesn't. We've started. Now these journeys aren't fixed in 1 year or 2 years. There's 5, 6, 8, 10-year investment plans that have to be undertaken.
Just one more question on tracks, because we're going to take a break soon, Bernard, and get on to other issues. Of course, there's some great positive news as well. People watching this who just like a bet, and on Saturday meetings cancelled, they go, well, why don't we just transfer it from counties to Cambridge on the synthetic? Is that not an option? Can we not do that? Because they tried to do it in Queensland on the weekend, and it was a half and half. Some trainers yes, some trainers no. Is it a possibility we'll see meetings go from, no, it's too wet, we're going to go to the synthetic?
Yeah, and we have done that. That's days out to try and shift a meeting where you've taken nominations to run on grass, and then you move to the synthetic after you've taken nominations. The experience I've had in Australia through the Victorian system, you'll lose 60% of the horses from scratchings. So yes, we need to accept that at times, making calls a week out, when we look at the weather going forward, the industry has to learn to understand that. If an NZTR makes a call on the Monday for a meeting on the Friday that there's a weather event coming, and it comes, oh, great decision. When it doesn't come, we have to learn to accept that, because that's the world we're living in, and we have to make those calls early. So there'll be people who say, oh, you've made the wrong call. Yeah, but the weather event, there was 4 inches of rain coming and we didn't want to take the risk. They're the things we have to start to do, and the industry has to accept that.
Yep, exactly right. Well, that's the first part of our interview with Bernard. We'll be back after the break for more of that. We get into the whip rule. On the back of the break, we head out and about, and it's the Ready Teddy Award coming in from the Matamata Horse Trials.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
I'm Monica Spencer and I'm an event rider from New Zealand. This is Artist and we call him Max at home. He's a true gentleman and he just tries his hardest every day and he loves his job. By nature a little bit afraid of the world and everything in it, but he does it for me and it makes it even more special, yeah. So Polly McDonald bought him from Event Stars as a 3-year-old. And then I spotted him at a show jump show. Polly had him at his first show jump show as a 4-year-old, and I saw him in the warm-up and I said, wow, I like that horse, and then I bought him from Polly. New Zealand Thoroughbreds are great for eventing. I wouldn't rather sit on anything else. I love that there's always more in the tank and they're so generous with their energy, you know, they just keep trying, and those hills felt effortless today. New Zealand Thoroughbreds are such versatile horses. I've got 3 here today. They all jumped well and I think it's amazing that they can be, such good athletes. They can be bred to run fast, and then they come here and they try hard, and they let us train them to do another discipline, which is pretty cool. And I don't think you could say that for many other breeds. Winning the Ready Teddy trophy was great, and it's cool to remember that special horse that he was of Blythe Tate's, and love it, yeah. I would just like to say a big thank you to NZTBA for sponsoring this award. It's so cool that we can give these special animals the recognition they deserve.
And a big well done to Monica Spencer, who took out not only the 4-star on that horse, Artist, but also the 3-star on another thoroughbred by Postponed. And of course, Artist, a graduate of Windsor Park Stud, also coming through Event Stars as well. Well done to them. And the award, Ready Teddy Award, he was also a thoroughbred himself, an Olympic gold medalist at Atlanta in 1996. Good to see Blythe Tate there presenting the award as well. I guess that's a nice segue into retired thoroughbreds, and we saw there their versatility and what they can do. And what Gina and Schick and Nikki Wallace do at Event Stars is so important, and it's led to quite a lot of growth, hasn't it, Bernard?
That's right, Emily. Over the last 18 months, 2 years, we've been working with both Nikki and Gina in building out a broader accredited retraining network. And Gina and Nikki have been doing this for a number of years and do an outstanding job. But we felt spreading that across the country, so we've got three accredited retrainers in the North Island, one in the CD, another 4 in the South Island, all now up on our website. And when people do want to rehome a horse, we've got networks that these horses can go into and be equestrian stars.
Yeah, exactly. Stars is right.
You were telling us, that's such wonderful shots, aren't they, to remind us of what else horses can do. You were telling me before that Racing Victoria is spending $25 million on rehoming horses. Now, we don't have that scale or economy here to do that, but it's a huge issue, Bernard, that clearly we're getting in front of, but we need to stay in front of.
We do, Mick. It's a challenge in changing the perceptions of the community, and I'd probably say, I think the last bit of research I saw, 50% don't want to know about. The other 50% have been involved in some way or understand the horse or been to a race meeting or understand what a thoroughbred is. So we've got a massive job to change those perceptions. Look, our industry across all our participants do an amazing job. The horses are cared for. It's how do we continue to get that message out there and convince. And I think the best way is through ownership, owning and breeding. I'm absolutely convinced the way syndication's heading, getting a 1 or 2% share in a horse and being with friends and enjoying that excitement is all part of the journey we need to go on. We need to also encourage those horses that are racing to go into the networks, whether if it's not equestrian, if it's just the love of the horse, pony club, horse riding clubs, those networks are there, and we have got relationships with a number of those groups across New Zealand.
You mentioned the word perception. That's very crucial to the next subject. Whips, persuaders. We should call them persuaders. You've had a revaluation after 6 months of the penalties or the likely penalties around whip usage, and some news has come through, and I think there's some sense has come into this conversation. You've worked with the jockeys, the Racing Integrity Board. Let's talk about them in 2 separate pieces. First of all, the consecutive whip strides, which I was furious about, as you know. There's been a change to the penalty submissions or the penalty guidelines around that?
So, yeah, I think what we've learned over the last 6 months is there was an unintended consequence of linking penalties together across the 2 sub-rules. So the 2 sub-rules that have different penalty regimes now, one is the whips, the 5 times before the 100, and then consecutive strikes. Now, I suppose the best one I noticed up on your screen now is Opie's ride on the Perfect Pink. Opie had been rubbed out, he had 6 offences. He had 3 under the consecutive stride rule and 3 under the excessive strikes before the 100.
Yeah, okay.
They were, when the stewards and the adjudicator panel talked about the penalty regime, that pushed a collective view into a suspension for national days. What we have got now, those rules will be kept separate, and there'll be a separate application for whip strikes before the 100, and then consecutive strides will be considered separately. So, in essence, that will now go to a monetary fine of $300 under a similar circumstance, and that's been supported by our trainers, by our jockeys, Now, what we have to say is I think the jockeys have adapted really well. In the last 5 years, they've continued to adapt their riding styles. The number of whip offences, the data I've seen as part of this review, has continued to decline. And we have to be mindful that the use of the whip is something that is being watched very carefully.
And that's at the ministerial level. Let's muck around. The minister's level is watching the whip stuff, aren't they?
100%.
Okay. No one wants horses to be hit more. We understand that, and this rule doesn't allow for that, or these penalty guidelines don't allow for that. But what we're saying is that it's very easy for a jockey to hit a horse in consecutive strides, and if they've done nothing else wrong in a race, I don't think it's that bad an offence. But what we're suggesting now is, rather than the third example of that, or third occasion getting you suspended, you will now have a series of fines which would lead to an automatic suspension at the fifth occasion. Is that correct?
Yep. Four or more consecutive
So if
strides.
jockeys are watching this and they don't want to keep losing their job, where do they go to find out about this, and how do we all get on the same page so we know exactly what's happening?
So the Jockeys Association will have an updated copy now of the whip guidelines, and they'll be up on our website.
Okay. Is this satisfactory? And do the jockeys have to police this? Do the jockeys have to say to the younger jockeys in the room, even though they're individual contractors, pull your head in, you need to be part of this too, otherwise these guys in Wellington are going to get pissed off with us and take the whips off us.
Yeah.
Do we have to work on this together? Because I think that's important as well.
It's a collective responsibility, yes, we do, and I think the jockeys are doing that. We've just got to evolve. We've got to evolve the penalty guidelines and how we want the jockeys to perform. There's no doubt, I think, in my view, the whip has to be carried, right? And I'm seeing some great examples over the since the 1st September where jockeys are. In fact, they were doing better before the 1st September. But we've just continued to evolve whip use, and that'll be a continual review. Every 12 months we'll need to look at this once we get the next 6 months out the way, and understanding the trend in whip offences, getting feedback from the stewards, feedback from the adjudicators, but also feedback from the jockeys. It's
not all negative, Bernard. The last year, you guys have been in JVs, joint ventures, with a lot of overseas betting operators. Now, we see the TAB as our main supplier of turnover and therefore profit for the industry. But you're working with some of these other bookmakers to say, well, if you're going to bet on New Zealand racing, we want our share of the profits. That seems to be very successful. And do you find that you're able to work with them and they have respect for New Zealand racing and it's not just this Saturday morning thing?
Well, no, they've certainly got respect for New Zealand racing because they've got up on their websites that you can have a bet on New Zealand racing, any one of the 3 codes. And we have now signed 25 wagering operators out of Australia.
And we get a percentage of what they bet?
We get 2.5% of that. So it's 2.5% of their turnover, plus if they want to take vision, it's another 0.5, which would round it up to 3%. So from the very big operators, Tab and Sportsbet and Ladbrokes, to the boom bets, the text bets that are opening up right across Australia. We've got wagering operators opening in Australia that are turning over $20 and $30 million a month, and they're the small operators. We think we've probably got 98 to 95, definitely more than 95% of the market, and that's a revenue stream that'll, I hope, in the next 2 or 3 years, will hit $10 million a year for New Zealand Thoroughbred racing.
And that will be very good. Everyone will be glad to hear that. Unfortunately, that's it for us here on Weigh In. As always, it just flies by. We'll be back with you next week to review, of course, what will be Derby Day. Not only that, but the Karaka sales will be off and underway.